The sky over the Imperial capital did not weep for Lady Lin Meifeng, it simply froze. A bitter wind howled through the execution grounds, carrying the scent of incense and impending death. Meifeng knelt on the wooden platform, her once exquisite white silk robes stained with the filth of the Ministry of Justice's deepest pits. Her hands, famed for their skill in both the zither and the art of pulse reading, were shattered, broken during interrogation to ensure she could never write the truth of her innocence. Across the square, seated on a high, draped dais, was Prince Li Wei, the man she had loved. The man she had used her family's vast wealth and political genius to set upon the path to the throne. Beside him sat Shen Lian, the woman Meifeng had once called her closest friend. Lin Meifeng, Li Wei's voice rang out, cold and devoid of the warmth that had once promised her the position of empress. For the crime of poisoning the late emperor and conspiring with northern rebels, the heavens demand your blood. Meifeng raised her head. Her vision was blurred, but her spirit remained unbroken. I gave you my heart, and you used it as a stepping stone. I gave you my family's loyalty, and you used it as a shroud. She looked directly at Shen Lian, who was currently wearing the phoenix hairpins that belonged to the Lin family's matriarch. Shen Lian didn't look away. She simply smiled, a tiny, triumphant curve of the lips. Executioner Li Wei commanded, his eyes meeting Meifeng's for one final, chilling second. Proceed. As the heavy blade swung, Meifeng didn't pray for mercy. She didn't pray for a peaceful afterlife. With her final breath, as the cold steel touched her neck, she made a pact with the vengeful ghosts of the north. If there is a cycle of karma, let me be the one to turn the wheel. Let me return as their nightmare. The world went red, then an infinite, crushing black. 16 years earlier, miss. Second young miss. Please wake up. The charcoal in the brazier has gone out. The voice was young, frantic, and hauntingly familiar. Meifeng's eyes flew open. She gasped, her lungs burning as if she had just surfaced from a deep lake. She instinctively reached for her throat, but there was no blood. No scar, only the soft, smooth skin of a girl. She looked around. This wasn't the damp stone of a cell. She was draped in fine quilts of pale plum blossom silk. The scent of sandalwood drifted through the air. Aju, Meifeng whispered. A young girl, barely 14, rushed to her bedside. It was Aju, the loyal maid who had been beaten to death in the palace corridors 3 days before Meifeng's own execution. Here, she was alive, her face round and unblemished. I'm here, miss. You were screaming in your sleep. Was it a nightmare? Meifeng sat up, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked at her hands. They were small, delicate, and whole. No broken fingers, no scars from the shackles. She grabbed a bronze mirror from the bedside table. The reflection that stared back was herself, but younger. She was 14 again. This was the year her father was promoted to Grand Secretary. This was the year she first met Li Wei at the Lantern Festival. A cold, sharp smile slowly spread across Meifeng's face. The gods hadn't just given her a second chance. They had given her the ultimate weapon, the future. Aju, Meifeng said, her voice steadying into a calm that didn't belong to a 14-year-old girl. What is the date? It is the 10th day of the first lunar month. Miss, the Lantern Festival is tonight. You were so excited to go see the displays at the bridge. The bridge. The very place she had accidentally met Li Wei and saved him from a minor scuffle, beginning her descent into his trap. Get my red cloak, Meifeng commanded, swinging her legs out of bed, and find me a set of needles from my father's medical chest. We are going to the festival, but we aren't going to see the lanterns. Then, what are we doing, miss? Meifeng looked at her reflection, her eyes gleaming with a terrifying clarity. We're going to watch a prince fall into a hole he doesn't know I've dug yet. The Lantern Festival was a riot of color and light. Thousands of paper lanterns, dragons, lotuses, and celestial cranes bobbed in the night sky, reflecting off the dark waters of the Grand Canal. To any other girl of 14, it was a dream of romance. To Lin Meifeng, it was a battlefield she had already lost once. "Ms., slow down!" Aju panted, clutching the edges of her cloak as she hurried after Meifeng. "The main bridge is that way. Why are we heading toward the deserted warehouses of the North Wharf?" Meifeng didn't answer. Her mind was a map of blood and shadows. In her past life, this was the night Li Wei was ambushed by street thugs. She had happened upon the scene, used her basic martial arts to distract the attackers, and helped him escape. He had called her his brave savior, and she had fallen for the lie. Only years later did she learn the truth. The ambush had been staged. Li Wei had hired those men to attack him so he could coincidentally be rescued by the daughter of the Grand Secretary, ensuring a debt of gratitude that would bind their families together. "If you want to show, Li Wei," Meifeng thought, her fingers brushing the cold steel of the medical needles hidden in her sleeve, "I will give you a masterpiece." They reached the shadows of the silk warehouses. The festive music was a muffled hum in the distance. Suddenly, the sound of clashing blades echoed through the alley. "Someone is fighting!" Aju gasped, her face turning pale. "Miss, we must call the guards. Stay here and keep silent," Meifeng commanded. Her voice was like cracked ice, brook no argument. She crept toward the mouth of the alley. There he was. Li Wei. At 17, he was already strikingly handsome. His features refined, and his posture regal, even as he struggled against 3 masked men. He was holding a sword, defending himself with just enough grace to look noble, but enough difficulty to look like he needed help. Meifeng watched from the darkness. She recognized the masked men now. They weren't thugs. They were his own personal guards in disguise. In her past life, she had jumped in now. This time, she waited. She waited until Li Wei purposefully tripped over a crate, feigning a twisted ankle to draw her out. "Help! Is anyone there?" Li Wei called out, his voice perfectly pitched with a hint of desperate courage. Meifeng stepped out of the shadows. But she didn't run to him. She didn't cry out in alarm. She walked slowly, her red cloak billowing behind her like a pool of drying blood. My, she said, her voice dripping with mock concern. "A prince of the realm, cornered by 3 common thieves? How embarrassing for the Imperial lineage." Li Wei froze. This wasn't the script. He looked up, expecting a terrified, wide-eyed noble girl he could charm. Instead, he met a pair of eyes that looked like they had seen the end of the world. "Young lady, stay back!" Li Wei shouted, trying to regain control of the scene. "It's dangerous!" One of the thugs, confused by the change in the girl's demeanor, lunged at Meifeng to frighten her away. Meifeng didn't flinch. In her past life, she was a master of the silver needle technique, able to paralyze a man by hitting a pressure point no larger than a grain of rice. Flick! A silver flash darted through the air. The thug suddenly collapsed, his legs turning to water as the needle buried itself in his lumbar vertebra. He didn't even have time to scream. The other 2 attackers hesitated, looking toward Li Wei for instruction. Meifeng caught the look. "Why are they looking at you, Your Highness?" Meifeng asked, tilting her head innocently. "Do they require your permission to bleed?" Li Wei scrambled to his feet, his injured ankle miraculously forgotten. I don't know what you mean. Who are you?" "A ghost," Meifeng whispered, stepping closer until she was just inches from him. The scent of her sandalwood incense filled his senses, but it felt cold, like a funeral shroud. "I am the ghost of every mistake you haven't made yet." She reached out and patted his cheek. It was a gesture of utter disrespect, one that should have cost her her life. But Li Wei was too stunned to move. The ambush was sloppy. Wei Geij, she hissed the intimate nickname into his ear, a name she shouldn't know yet. Next time, tell your men to actually aim for the vitals. It makes the lie much more believable. She turned on her heel and began to walk away. Wait, Li Wei called out, his voice trembling, this time with genuine confusion and a spark of dangerous interest. What is your name? Meifeng didn't look back. She raised a hand and waved dismissively. Forget my name for now. You'll be hearing it in your nightmares soon enough. Back at the Lin Manor. As Meifeng returned to her room, she found her father, Lord Lin, waiting in the courtyard. He looked troubled, holding a letter sealed with black wax. Mif's heart gave a cold thud. This was a year earlier than in her past life. Shen Lian. The woman who had helped Li Wei destroy her was already in the palace as a low-ranking lady-in-waiting. If Meifeng entered the palace now, she wouldn't just be a noble girl. She would be stepping directly into the viper's nest. Father, Meifeng said, bowing low, her eyes burning with a dark light. Do not worry. I have been practicing my studies for a long time. The palace is exactly where I belong. The Imperial Palace was a golden cage of soaring eaves and treacherous silences. In her past life, Meifeng had entered these gates with a heart full of hope, thinking she was stepping into a fairy tale. Now, as her carriage rolled over the stone threshold, she felt like a wolf entering a sheepfold, except the sheep were all wearing silk and carrying poisoned fans. Meifeng was led to the Pavilion of Eternal Spring, where the potential studying companions were to be vetted. Standing in a neat row were 5 other girls from noble families. And there she was, Shen Lian. In this timeline, Shen Lian was already a favored lady in waiting to the 3rd consort. She stood off to the side, holding a tray of tea, her head bowed in a show of perfect, humble grace. To the world, she was a harmless, orphaned daughter of a fallen official. To Meifeng, she was the woman who had watched the executioner's blade fall with a smile. The 3rd consort will see you now, a head eunuch announced. As the girls filed in, Shen Lian stepped forward to offer tea. When she reached Meifeng, she paused, her eyes flickering upward. In her past life, this was where they had first bonded over a spilled cup of tea, beginning their false friendship. Shen Lian's hand trembled slightly. The hot tea tilted, destined for Meifeng's expensive silk sleeves. Here we go, Meifeng thought. In a move so fast the eye could barely follow, Meifeng's hand shot out. She didn't move away. She caught Shen Lian's wrist. Her grip was like a vice, her thumb pressing hard into a specific nerve point. The tea tray leveled instantly. Not a single drop fell. Careful, Sister Meifeng whispered, her voice a low, melodic chime. Such a pretty face would look dreadful if the consort saw you being so clumsy. People might think you did it on purpose. Shen Lian's eyes widened. The pain in her wrist was sharp, but Meifeng's face was a mask of serene kindness. I apologize, my lady, Shen Lian stammered, her humble facade cracking for the briefest of moments. I must have tripped. Then watch your step, Meifeng said, releasing her with a pat on the hand that felt like a threat. The palace floors are very slippery. Many people fall and never get back up. The 3rd consort, a woman whose beauty was beginning to fade into a sharp-edged bitterness, sat behind a beaded curtain. I am told the Lin family daughter is a prodigy of medicine and literature. The consort's voice drifted out. Tell me, Lin Meifeng, if a garden is beautiful but the roots are rotting, do you prune the leaves or burn the soil? The other girls looked confused. It was a strange, metaphorical question. But Meifeng knew exactly what the consort was asking. The garden was the Imperial court. The rotting roots were the corrupt officials. Neither, Your Highness, Meifeng replied, stepping forward and bowing perfectly. Oh? The consort sounded intrigued. And why is that? If you prune the leaves, the rot remains. If you burn the soil, You destroy the garden's future, Meifeng said, her eyes cold and clear. You must find the parasite feeding on the root, pull it out slowly so it cannot regrow, and then use its remains as fertilizer for the next season. Revenge is only useful if it nourishes what comes after. Silence fell over the pavilion. The third consort stepped from behind the curtain, her eyes narrowed. She had never heard a 14-year-old girl speak with such terrifying pragmatism. You have a dangerous tongue, Lady Lin, the consort whispered. Only for those who deserve to hear it, Your Highness, Meifeng replied. Later that evening, as Meifeng walked through the palace gardens to clear her head, a shadow detached itself from a weeping willow tree. You certainly know how to make an impression. Meifeng didn't turn around. She knew that voice. It was deep, slightly raspy, and belonged to someone who shouldn't be in the inner palace at night. General Xiao. In her past life, he was the silent god of war, the only man who had dared to speak up for the Lin family during the trial. He had been exiled for his loyalty to the truth. In this life, he was currently the commander of the Imperial Guard and a man known for being as cold as a mountain peak. General Xiao? Meifeng said, finally turning to look at him. He was tall, dressed in dark armor, his hand resting habitually on the hilt of his blade, sneaking around the consort's quarters. That's a capital offense. Xiao Ju stepped into the moonlight. He looked at her with intense curiosity. I saw what you did to that maid's wrist earlier. That wasn't the move of a pampered noble girl. That was a strike meant to disable. I have no idea what you're talking about, she lied smoothly. Li Wei is looking for you, Xiao Ju warned, stepping closer. He's obsessed with finding the red-cloaked ghost from the festival. You've poked a hornet's nest, Lady Lin. Why? Meifeng looked up at the moon, the same moon that had watched her die. Because, General, she said, her voice barely a whisper, I've realized that in this palace, you are either the one holding the needle or the one being pricked. And I am done being the victim. Xiao Ju leaned in, his eyes searching hers. And if I told you that Li Wei isn't the only one watching you, then I would tell you to be careful. Meifeng smiled, a sharp, beautiful thing. Or you might find yourself caught in the crossfire. The Mid-Autumn Banquet was the first true test of the season. The air in the Hall of Supreme Harmony was thick with the scent of roasted meats, expensive wine, and the underlying rot of hidden agendas. Meifeng sat at her father's side, a vision of icy elegance in a gown of midnight blue silk. She noticed Shen Lian standing behind the third consort, her eyes downcast, playing the part of the invisible servant. But Meifeng felt the girl's gaze, a cold, calculating stare that lingered whenever she thought no one was looking. Across the hall, Prince Li Wei was holding court. He looked every bit the perfect prince, laughing with officials, but his eyes kept drifting toward the Lin family table. He was a predator who had found a new, confusing kind of prey. The wine is excellent tonight, isn't it, Lady Lin? The voice came from beside her. It was Lord Chun, the Minister of Rights, a man who, in her past life, had been the one to produce the forged letters that sealed her fate. The wine is fine, Lord Chun, Meifeng said, not even looking at him. But I find the company at this table a bit sour. Lord Chun's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. You have a sharp wit for one so young. Perhaps too sharp. It would be a shame if such a talented girl were to stumble. I don't stumble, Lord Chun, Meifeng replied, finally turning to him. Her eyes were like twin daggers. I only step on things that are in my way. As was tradition, the noble daughters were expected to provide entertainment for the emperor. One girl played the flute. Another performed a graceful ribbon dance. Then, Li Wei stood up. Father, he said, bowing to the emperor. I have heard that Lady Lin Meifeng's skill with the zither is unmatched. Would she grace us with a song of eternal peace? It was a trap. Eternal Peace was a notoriously difficult piece, but more importantly, it was the song Meifeng had played for him on the night he proposed in her past life. He was trying to see if he could evoke a reaction, or perhaps he was testing if the girl from the wharf was truly her. Meifeng rose slowly. She felt the eyes of the entire court on her. She felt Zhao Ju's gaze from his post by the pillars, his hand tightening on his sword. "I shall play," Meifeng said, her voice echoing. "But I find Eternal Peace a bit stagnant. With His Majesty's permission, I shall play the General's Lament." A murmur went through the room. The General's Lament was a song of war, of blood, and of righteous fury. It was not a feminine song. She sat at the zither. Her broken fingers from her past life seemed to phantom make for a moment. Then she struck the first chord. It wasn't music. It was a declaration of war. The notes were sharp, discordant, and powerful. She played with a ferocity that silenced the hall. She channeled every scream from the dungeon, every drop of blood on the executioner's block, into the strings. The Emperor leaned forward, mesmerized. Li Wei looked pale, as if the music were physically hitting him. As she reached the crescendo, a string snapped. The sound cut through the air like a whip. Meifeng didn't stop. She used her bare finger to pluck the remaining strings, the sharp edge drawing a single drop of blood from her fingertip. She finished the song with a haunting, low vibration. Silence. Then the Emperor began to clap. "Exceptional," the Emperor breathed. A bit grim, perhaps, but such passion. "You have the spirit of a warrior, Lady Lin." As Meifeng bowed and stepped down, she passed Li Wei. He leaned in, his voice a low hiss. "You are not the girl I remember from the scrolls. Who are you?" "I am the person you made me," she whispered, a cryptic truth he couldn't possibly understand. She walked out toward the terrace to catch her breath. The night air was cool, but the blood on her finger was still warm. "You're bleeding." Zhao Ju was there, stepping out from the shadows of a stone lion. He didn't ask permission. He took her hand and looked at the small cut from the snapped string. "It's nothing," Meifeng said, trying to pull away. "It's a warning," Zhao Ju corrected. He pulled a small silk cloth from his belt and wrapped it around her finger. "You pushed too hard tonight. Li Wei is suspicious, and Lord Chun is already looking for a way to discredit your father." "I know what I'm doing, General." "Do you?" Zhao Ju's eyes were intense. "Because I just intercepted a message. Shen Lian didn't just trip with that tea earlier. She was testing a poison, a slow-acting one. She's been slipping it into the third consort's medicine for weeks." Meifeng's heart skipped a beat. Shen Lian was already killing the consort. In her past life, the consort had died of natural causes a year later. "She's moving faster than before," Meifeng muttered to herself. "Who is?" Zhao Ju asked. "The snake in the grass," Meifeng said, her eyes darkening. "General, if you want to help me, don't protect me. Help me find out where Shen Lian gets her supplies. If I can catch her with the poison, I can strip her of her protection before she even knows I'm her enemy." Zhao Ju looked at her for a long time, then nodded. "Tomorrow night, the West Gate. Don't be late." As Meifeng returned to her carriage, she found a small, crumpled note tucked into her sleeve. She opened it under the dim light of a lantern. "The phoenix thinks she has returned, but the serpent has many heads. Look to your brother's tea tomorrow morning." Meifeng's blood turned to ice. Her younger brother, Lin Jun, was the only person she truly loved. If they were targeting him this early, she had to change her strategy. Meifeng stared at the note until the ink blurred. In her past life, her brother Jun had died on the battlefield, a death she later realized was orchestrated to leave the Lin family without an heir. Now, they were coming for him while he was still a boy, a student at the Imperial Academy. "Adieu," Meifeng whispered, as they stepped into the manor. "Go to the kitchen, quietly. Find the tea leaves delivered for the second young master. Bring me a sample, and replace the rest with the dried mulberry leaves from my medical kit. Do not let the head steward see you." Aju nodded, her eyes wide with fear, but her loyalty absolute. Meifeng didn't go to sleep. She sat in her darkened room, the silk bandage Xiao Ju had tied around her fingers still smelling faintly of sandalwood and cold iron. She spread her medical tools on the table: silver needles, crushed cinnabar, and a vial of moonshadow grass, a rare herb that could induce a state of suspended animation so profound it mimicked death. If she simply stopped the poisoning, the enemy would just find another way. To save June, she had to make them believe they had already succeeded. The sun rose over the Lin manor with a deceptive peace. At the breakfast table, Lin Juna, bright-eyed boy of 12, was chattering about his calligraphy lessons. "Sister, you look pale," June said, reaching for his tea. "Did the palace banquet tire you out?" Ms. Hart twisted. She reached out, her hand steady as she ruffled his hair. "I'm fine, Junner. Just drink your tea. It's good for your health." Behind the screens, Meifeng caught a glimpse of a pair of eyes watching from the shadows of the hallway. The head steward, a man who had served her father for 20 years. A man who, in her previous life, had disappeared right before the family's downfall. Jun took a sip of the mulberry tea. Meifeng had already slipped a mind dose of the moonshadow grass into his bowl. Seconds later, the boy gasped. His cup clattered to the floor, shattering into 100 porcelain shards. He clutched his throat, his eyes rolling back as he slumped forward onto the table. "Junner!" Meifeng screamed. It was a sound of pure, raw agony, half-acted, half-remembered from the many times she had lost him before. The household erupted into chaos. Lord Lin rushed in, his face turning ashen as he saw his only son, motionless. The head steward hurried forward, his face a mask of shock, but Meifeng saw the subtle relaxation of his shoulders. "He's gone," the steward whispered after checking the boy's pulse. "Master, the tea. It must have been the tea." "Call the physician!" Lord Lin roared, his voice breaking. "No," Meifeng stood up, her face tear-stained but her eyes terrifyingly cold. "I am a physician. If I couldn't save him, no one can. Carry him to the ancestral hall. No one enters but me. I will prepare my brother for the afterlife myself." That night, the Lin manor was draped in white funeral silk. The air was heavy with the smell of burning joss paper. Meifeng sat alone by her brother's body in the ancestral hall. In her hand, she held a single silver needle. She heard the creak of the door. A shadow moved toward the casket. It was the head steward, carrying a small vial. He needed to ensure the job was done, or perhaps retrieve the evidence of the poison he had used. "You're late, Steward Xiao," Meifeng said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The man jumped, nearly dropping the vial. "Miss! I merely wanted to pay my respects. With a vial of 7-step viper venom?" Meifeng stood up, stepping into the candlelight. "The tea you poisoned this morning was replaced. My brother isn't dead. He's merely sleeping. But you? You are about to wake up to a nightmare." Xiao turned to bolt, but the doors slammed shut. Xiao Ju stepped out from behind a pillar, his sword drawn. "The general?" Xiao gasped, his knees buckling. "He's been waiting for you to lead us to your contact," Meifeng said, walking toward him. She took the vial from his shaking hand. "Tell me, steward, who bought your soul? Was it Lord Chun, or was it the little snake in the palace, Shen Lian?" I can't say. They'll kill my family. And what do you think I will do to you?" Meifeng leaned in, her voice a terrifying whisper. "I know the pressure points that can keep a man awake while his skin is peeled back inch by inch. I learned a lot of things in the dark, steward. Things you haven't even dreamed of." Xiao looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a demon wearing the face of a young girl. He broke, It was Lord Chun. He said the Lin family had to be pruned. He gave the poison to a maid named Shen Lian, who passed it to me. Meifeng looked at Xiao. The general's expression was grim. We have the link, Xiao said. But Lord Chun is a high-ranking official. A steward's word isn't enough to bring him down. I don't want to bring him down yet, Meifeng said, a dark light in her eyes. I want him to think he succeeded. Let the news of the death spread. Let them celebrate. When people celebrate, they get careless. She turned back to her brother and pressed a needle into his neck, neutralizing the moon shadow grass. June began to stir, his breathing returning to normal. General, Miv said without looking back. You said you'd help me find where Shen Lian gets her supplies. I have a new plan. I'm going to go to my brother's funeral tomorrow, and I want you to make sure Prince Li Wei is there to see my grief. Xiao frowned. Why? Because, Meifeng smiled. Nothing lures a predator out like the scent of a wounded bird. And I am going to play the broken, grieving sister so well that Li Wei will think I am finally vulnerable enough to trust. The Lin Manor was a sea of white. White lanterns, white banners, and the white, suffocating smoke of incense. The news of the sudden death of the Lin heir had sent shockwaves through the capital. To the public, it was a tragedy. To the conspirators, it was the first domino to fall. Meifeng stood by the empty casket, weighted with stones and sand to mimic Chun's weight, while the real June was hidden safely in a secret cellar beneath the apothecary, guarded by Xiaoju's most trusted men. She wore no makeup. Her skin was unnaturally pale, dusted with a powder that made her look sickly, and her eyes were rimmed with red. She looked like a girl whose world had ended. The second prince, His Highness Li Wei, has arrived to pay his respects, the crier announced. Meifeng didn't move. She stared into the flickering flames of the brazier where she was burning spirit money. Li Wei entered, his expression a masterpiece of practiced sorrow. He walked toward her, his footsteps soft on the stone floor. Behind him, as part of his entourage, was Lord Chun. They had come to gloat under the guise of grieving. Lady Lin, Li Wei said, his voice dropping to a gentle, comforting register. I was devastated to hear the news. To lose a brother so young. The heavens are truly cruel. Meifeng slowly turned her head. Her gaze was vacant, hollow. The heavens didn't do this, Your Highness. Li Wei blinked, his mask slipping for a heartbeat. What do you mean? My brother was healthy. He was strong, she said, her voice trembling with a controlled, terrifying rage. She stood up, staggering slightly, and Li Wei instinctively reached out to steady her. She let him. He was murdered. I found the traces of poison in his cup. A ripple of hushed whispers broke out among the guests. Lord Chun's eyes narrowed, his hand tightening on his jade belt. Murdered? Lord Chun stepped forward, his tone patronizing. Lady Lin, grief can play tricks on the mind. Surely, in your sorrow, you are seeing shadows where there are none. Meifeng turned her gaze to Lord Chun. It was the look of a person who had nothing left to lose. Is it a shadow, Lord Chun, or is it a curse? She stepped toward him, her voice rising so the entire hall could hear. Before my brother drew his last breath, he told me he saw a man in a black robe by his window. He said the man smelled of dragon's blood incense, the kind only the highest officials are permitted to use. Lord Chun turned pale. He did, in fact, use that very incense. I have made a vow, Meifeng continued, her voice echoing off the rafters. I have placed a drop of my own blood into my brother's shroud. I have called upon the underworld. Whoever took his life will find no peace. Their tea will turn to gall. Their sleep will be filled with the sound of a child's weeping. And within 49 days, the truth will bleed out of their own skin. As the guests departed, Meifeng watched them from the shadows of the veranda. She saw Lord Chun pull Li Wei aside in the garden, Even from a distance, she could see Chun's agitated gestures. "She knows something," Lord Chun hissed, his voice carrying on the night wind. "She's a grieving girl talking about ghosts," Li Wei replied, though his own expression was troubled. "But she is observant. If she found the poison, we need to ensure the steward is silent." "The steward is gone," Chun whispered. "I sent men to his house. He fled. If the Imperial Guard finds him, then find him first," Li Wei snapped. Meifeng leaned against the pillar, a cold smile touching her lips. They were already turning on each other. The curse wasn't magic. It was psychological warfare. Every time Lord Chun felt a twitch in his eye or a chill in the air, he would think of her words. "You play a dangerous game, Lady Lin." Xiao Ju appeared on the roof above her, dropping down with the silence of a cat. He looked at her mourning clothes, then at the sharp clarity in her eyes. "The steward didn't flee," Meifeng said. "You have him?" "He's in my private dungeon," Xiao Ju confirmed. "But there's a problem. Shen Lian isn't just a maid. My scouts tracked her movement tonight. She didn't go back to the palace. She went to a hidden manor in the Western Hills, a place owned by the Prince of Kiel, Li Wei's older brother and rival for the throne." Mif froze. In her past life, she thought Li Wei was the sole mastermind. If Shen Lian was working for the Prince of Kia while being Li Wei's informant, it meant the betrayal was a double cross within a double cross. Li Wei doesn't know, Meifeng realized. He thinks Shen Lian is his pawn, but she's actually feeding him to the wolves. "Exactly," Xiaoju said, his face inches from hers. "If you reveal the truth to Li Wei, you might gain his favor, but you'll lose your chance to destroy them both. What is your choice?" Meifeng looked at her bandaged finger. "I want them all to burn. But first, I need to see Shen Lian. I want her to see the ghost she's so afraid of." Later that night, Meifeng dressed in the black gear of a night traveler. She followed the coordinates Xiao Ju gave her to the Western Hills. She slipped into the manor like a shadow. She found Shen Lian in a lavishly decorated room. Far too grand for a maid. Shen Lian was looking at a map of the capital, a vial of clear liquid, the same poison used on Jun's sitting on the table. Meifeng didn't use a sword. She used a blowpipe with a needle dipped in a hallucinogen. The needle grazed Shen Lian's neck. The girl gasped, clutching her throat. Within seconds, the room began to tilt. The shadows on the wall seemed to stretch and grow claws. Meifeng stepped out of the darkness, her face obscured by a veil but her eyes burning like embers. "Liana," Meifeng whispered, using the affectionate name she used in her past life. "The tea was a bit cold this morning, wasn't it?" Shen Lian's eyes bulged. Meifeng? No, you're at the manor. You're mourning." "I'm everywhere," Meifeng said, circling her. She reached out and touched the map. "The Prince of Kui won't save you." "He didn't save me. And Li Wei? He's already preparing to hand you over as the scapegoat for my brother's death." "You're lying," Shen Lian screamed, but her voice was weak, the drug taking hold. "Am I?" "Check the drawer of your vanity. You'll find a letter sealed with Li Wei's signet, authorizing your arrest for treasonous alchemy." Shen Lian stumbled to her vanity, her hands shaking. She found the letter. She broke the seal. As she read the forged words of Li Wei calling for her execution to appease the Lin family, her face went from pale to a ghostly blue. "He betrayed me," Shen Lian whispered, her voice cracking. "After everything I did for him." "He betrays everyone," Meifeng said, leaning over her shoulder like a dark angel. "But I can give you a way out. Give me the Prince of Ki's ledger. Give me the names of the officials he's bribed. Do it, and I'll let you live long enough to see Li Wei fall." Shen Lian clutched the forged letter, her knuckles white. The hallucinogen made the walls pulse like a beating heart, but the cold dread in her chest was entirely real. In her mind, the image of Li Wei, the man she had shed blood for, was warping into a monster. "The ledger," Shen Lian rasped, her eyes darting to a hollowed-out floorboard beneath her bed. It's not here. The Prince of Kui keeps it in the hidden pavilion. But I have something better. I have the original formula for the poison and the list of pharmacies where Lord Chen's men purchased the ingredients. Meifeng reached out, her gloved hand catching Shen Lian's chin. A list of shops is a start. But if you want to live, you will return to the palace tomorrow. You will act as if nothing happened. When Li Wei approaches you, you will tell him that the Lin family is planning to exhume the body to check for unusual toxins. He'll panic, Shen Lian whispered. Exactly, and in his panic, he will ask you to destroy the evidence. That is when you will bring that evidence to me instead. Meifeng vanished into the night just as the effect of the drug began to wane, leaving Shen Lian shivering on the floor, caught between two different kinds of death. Outside the manor walls, Xiao was waiting. He had neutralized the external guards so silently that the owls hadn't even stopped hooting. He watched Meifeng leap down from the perimeter wall, her movements fluid and lethal. You've turned her, Xiao noted, his voice a low rumble in the darkness. I've broken her, Meifeng corrected, stripping off her black veil. There's a difference. A turned spy works for gain. A broken spy works for survival. She's much more reliable now. Xiao walked beside her as they wound through the moonlit forest path. You used his signet. If Li Wei finds out you can forge his seal, he won't just try to marry you to control your family. He will kill you himself. Meifeng stopped and looked up at him. The moonlight caught the sharp angles of her face, making her look ancient and youthful all at once. He already killed me once, General. I'm simply returning the favor. Xiao reached out, his hand hovering near her cheek before he pulled back, settling for adjusting the cloak on her shoulder. The Emperor's birthday feast is in 3 days. The Prince of Qi plans to use the tragedy of your brother's death to claim the Lin family is cursed and unfit for the Grand Secretary position. He wants to replace your father with Lord Chen. Then we shall give them a curse they will never forget, Meifeng said. General, I need you to procure something for me. Something that smells like dragon's blood incense, but burns with a green flame. The palace was a shimmering sea of gold and crimson. The Emperor sat upon the dragon throne, seemingly oblivious to the daggers being exchanged in every glance below him. Meifeng sat at her father's side, still dressed in half-mourning colors of pale gray and silver. She looked fragile, a wilting lily among the vibrant peonies of the court. Prince Li Wei approached her during the first toast. Lady Lin, you look as though a gust of wind might carry you away. Please, have some of this medicinal wine. It was prepared specifically for the Imperial family. Meifeng looked at the cup. In her past life, this was the moment he had begun slow poisoning her to make her dependent on his cures. Your Highness is too kind, Meifeng said, taking the cup. She didn't drink. Instead, she accidentally bumped into a passing eunuch. The wine spilled not on her, but directly into the brazier burning nearby. The fire didn't hiss. It flared a brilliant, sickly emerald green. A thick, sweet scent of dragon's blood incense filled the hall, but it was suffocatingly heavy. The music stopped. The Emperor frowned, coughing into his silk handkerchief. What is that smell? Why is the fire that color? It's an omen, Lord Chen cried out, perhaps a bit too quickly. The Lin family's grief has brought a malady upon the hall. Your Majesty, this is the curse the girl spoke of. Meifeng stood up, her face a mask of horrified realization. No, it's not a curse. Your Majesty, I recognize that scent. It is the same scent that was on my brother's breath when he passed. She turned to Li Wei, her eyes wide with terror. Your Highness, the wine you just gave me. It's the same as the fire. Is this the medicine of the Imperial family? The Emperor's face went from pale to purple. Li Wei, explain yourself. Why does your medicine burn with the color of necromancy and smell of a dead boy's lungs? Li Wei's heart hammered against his ribs. He looked at the brazier, then at Meifeng. He realized, with a jolt of pure ice, that he had been walked into a cage. "Father, I bought this wine from the pharmacy Lord Chun recommended," Li Wei blurted out, the instinct for self-preservation overriding his alliance. Lord Chun's jaw dropped. "Your Highness, you said." "I said nothing!" Li Wei roared. At that moment, Shen Lian stepped forward from the shadows of the third consort's chairs. She knelt in the center of the hall, trembling. "Your Majesty," she sobbed, "I cannot keep silent any longer. I was forced by Lord Chun and the second prince to deliver herbs to the Lin Manor. They told me it was to help the young master sleep, but look." She threw a bundle of papers onto the floor. It was the list of pharmacies signed by Lord Chun's steward. And, most damning of all, a small jade pendant that belonged to Li Wei, found near the poison stash. Meifeng watched as the Emperor's guards surrounded Lord Chun and Li Wei. She saw the Prince of Kia smiling in the corner, thinking he had won. She caught Xiaoju's eye across the room. He gave a single, imperceptible nod. One head of the serpent down, she thought, watching Li Wei's frantic face. 2 to go. The hall was in an uproar. The Emperor, shaken by the revelation of his son's treachery, ordered Li Wei confined to the cold palace, and Lord Chun stripped of his titles and cast into the Ministry of Justice's dungeons. It was a victory, but Meifeng felt no warmth. She knew that in the Imperial family, power was like water. It didn't disappear, it simply flowed into the next empty vessel. That vessel was Li Kang, the Prince of Kia. As the guards dragged a screaming Lord Chun away, Li Kang stepped into the center of the hall. He was older than Li Wei, with a more refined, scholarly air that masked a heart of pure iron. "Your Majesty," Li Kang said, bowing deeply, "today we have witnessed a tragedy. The Lin family has suffered beyond measure due to the greed of my younger brother. To restore honor to the Lin name and to show the realm that the Imperial family values virtue above all, I humbly request a favor." The Emperor, weary and leaning on his eunuch, waved a hand. "Speak, Kang!" Li Kang turned his gaze to Meifeng. It wasn't the predatory look of Li Wei. It was the look of a collector eyeing a rare, dangerous jade. "I ask for the hand of Lady Lin Meifeng in marriage. Let her be my primary consort. Together, we shall heal the rift between the throne and the Grand Secretary's household." The room went silent. Her father, Lord Lin, looked paralyzed. To refuse a prince in front of the Emperor was an insult. To accept was to walk into a new, more sophisticated trap. Meifeng felt a cold breeze. She didn't have to look to know Xiaoju had tightened his grip on his sword in the shadows. "Your Highness is most generous," Meifeng said, stepping forward. Her voice was steady, her bow perfect. "But I am currently in mourning for my brother. To speak of marriage before the white lanterns have even dimmed would be a violation of filial piety." "A valid point," the Emperor muttered. "I do not ask for a wedding today," Li Kang pressed, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Only a betrothal. Let us use this time to get to know one another." "Lady Lin, I have a library in the Western Hills that contains medical texts from the lost dynasties. I believe they would interest you." He was holding the lost texts as baited a subtle threat. He was reminding her that he knew her secrets, her interests, and her location. After the feast, Meifeng walked through the moonlit palace gardens to wait for her carriage. A tall figure blocked her path near the bridge. "You're going to accept?" Xiaoju's voice was like grinding stone. "I have no choice but to delay," Meifeng said. "If I refuse outright, the Emperor will see it as the Lin family's arrogance. Li Kang is not Li Wei. He doesn't want my family's wealth, he wants my mind. He saw what I did tonight, and he wants that weapon for himself." Xiaoju stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. He is the one who controlled Shenlian. He is the one who allowed your brother to be poised just to see how you would react. He is a monster, Meifeng. I know, she whispered. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cold metal of his gauntlet. Which is why I need you to do something for me. Li Wei is in the cold palace. He is desperate, disgraced, and thinks he has lost everything. A man like that is a perfect firebrand. Xiaoju's eyes narrowed. You want me to help Li Wei escape? No, I want you to give him the means to think he is escaping. And I want you to make sure he knows that the person who truly betrayed him, the person who gave the Emperor the evidence, wasn't me. It was his brother, Li Kang. Xiaoju let out a low, dark laugh. You want the two brothers to tear each other apart. I want the wolf to eat the snake, Meifeng said. And while they are distracted, I will find the ledger Shenlian spoke of, the one hidden in the hidden pavilion. 2 nights later, Meifeng was no longer a mourning sister. She was a shadow in the western hills. Following the map Shenlian had scratched into a silk handkerchief, Meifeng bypassed the Prince of Qi's elite sentries. She reached the hidden pavilion, a structure built over a natural spring. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old paper and something metallic. She began searching the shelves, her fingers dancing over scrolls and jade boxes. She found it behind a false wall, the black ledger of Zhengwu. She opened it and her blood ran cold. It wasn't just a list of bribes, it was a record of the past life. Year of Zhengwu. The Lin family's downfall orchestrated. Evidence planted. Lady Lin Meifeng executed at dawn. Experiment successful. Meifeng's hands shook. Experiment? The ledger continued. Subject retained memory in 30% of trials. Monitoring the rebirth of the phoenix. She wasn't just a girl who had been lucky enough to be reborn. She was a test subject. The heavens hadn't given her a second chance, a secret cabal within the Imperial court. Led by the Prince of Qi and a mysterious great alchemist, had used an ancient, forbidden ritual to loop time. Do you like what you read? A lantern flared to life in the doorway. Li Kang stood there, holding a crossbow. He wasn't wearing his scholarly robes. He was dressed in the dark ceremonial garb of a high priest. You were a very successful trial, Meifeng, he said, his voice smooth and terrifyingly calm. In your last life, you were too soft. We needed to see if betrayal would sharpen you into the perfect strategist. And look at you now. You've destroyed a prince and a minister in a single night. Meifeng clutched the ledger to her chest. Her heart was a drum of war. You killed me. You killed my family. Just to see if I would become a better player? No. Li Kang smiled, stepping into the room. We did it because we need someone to lead the new era, and a phoenix is only born from ashes. Now, drop the ledger and come home. You are the masterpiece I've been waiting for. From the rafters above, a silver needle hissed through the air, knocking the crossbow from Li Kang's hand. Xiaoju dropped down beside Meifeng, his sword unsheathed and glowing with a cold blue light. She's not your masterpiece, Li Kang. She's your executioner. The air in the hidden pavilion turned frigid. Li Kang didn't look surprised by Xiaoju's intervention. Instead, he looked disappointed, like a teacher watching a student make a predictable mistake. Xiaoju, Li Kang sighed, ignoring the sword at his throat. Do you really think you're the hero of this story? How many times have you dropped from those rafters? 7? 8? Each time you die protecting her, and each time I turn the hourglass back to see if she'd finally be smart enough to leave you behind. Meifeng felt the world tilt. The ledger in her hand felt heavier than lead. The general, he has been dying for me? Over and over? She looked at Xiaoju. The general's hand stayed rock steady, but his eyes flickered with a brief, agonizing flash of recognition. He didn't have her memories, not fully, but the soul remembers what the mind forgets. This time is different, Meifeng said, her voice dropping to a deadly, resonant pitch. She stepped around Xiao, facing Li Kong. This time, I didn't just learn strategy. I learned your source. She held up the ledger, then ripped out the final page, the one containing the sigil of the great alchemist. The ritual requires a catalyst, Meifeng said, her medical knowledge connecting with the forbidden text. It requires the blood of the phoenix and the guardian at the moment of the eclipse. You haven't been testing my intelligence, Li Kang. You've been seasoning the meat. You needed us both at our peak of emotion, revenge, and love to power the next loop. Li Kang's smile vanished. You've read too much. I've read just enough. Li Kang raised a hand and snapped his fingers. From the dark corners of the pavilion, 4 men emerged. They didn't move like humans. Their limbs were stiff, their eyes glowing with a dull, amber light. These were the awakened warriors from previous cycles whose souls had been trapped in rotting husks. Kill the general, Li Kang commanded. But bring the girl to the altar. The eclipse begins in an hour. Xiao didn't wait. He lunged, his blade a blur of silver. Meifeng, run! Go to the grand altar beneath the palais. The sigil is destroyed there. He can never turn back the clock. I'm not leaving you. Go. Xiao parried a blow that would have shattered a normal man's ribs. This is the only life that matters. Make this the last one. Meifeng bit her lip until it bled. She turned and sprinted into the night, the ledger clutched to her chest. Behind her, she heard the screech of steel on bone and the roar of a general who refused to fall. The grand altar was hidden beneath the Imperial ancestral temple. Meifeng descended the secret stairs, her lungs burning. The air here smelled of ozone and ancient copper. In the center of a massive stone chamber stood a giant bronze vessel, the hourglass of ages. It wasn't filled with sand, but with a swirling, ethereal mist. Standing before it was a figure draped in tattered gold robes, the alchemist. You are early, Lady Lin, the alchemist croaked. He turned, revealing a face that was half flesh, half clockwork. Or perhaps you are exactly on time. Stop the ritual, Meifeng demanded, pulling out a vial of the green flame accelerant she had used at the banquet. I will burn this entire chamber to ash. If you burn it, you die, the alchemist said, and your general dies with you. Permanent death. No more chances. No more rebirth. Is that what you want? To simply cease? Meifeng looked at the hourglass. She saw flashes of her past lives in the mist, herself weeping in the dungeon, herself being poised by Li Wei, herself being betrayed by Shen Lian. 1,000 deaths. Then she saw Xiao. In every single image, he was there. Sometimes a guard, sometimes a beggar, sometimes a general. Always dying to buy her one more second. Yes, Meifeng said, her voice echoing with the strength of 1,000 years of sorrow. I would rather be nothing than a puppet in your play. She didn't throw the vial at the alchemist. She threw it at the base of the hourglass. The explosion shook the foundations of the capital. Emerald flames roared upward, consuming the bronze vessel. The ethereal mist escaped, screaming like a gale of wind. The emerald flames engulfed them both. Meifeng felt the fabric of reality tearing. She saw Li Kang running into the chamber, his face contorted in a mask of pure horror as his immortality dissolved into smoke. She saw the alchemist turn to dust, and then she felt a pair of strong arms wrap around her. I found you, Xiao whispered. He was covered in blood, his armor shattered, but his eyes were clear. The loop is breaking, Meifeng sobbed, clinging to him. We won't come back. If we die here, it's the end. Good, Xiao said, pulling her close as the ceiling began to collapse. I'm tired of losing you. I'd rather go into the void with you than live 1,000 lives without you. Epilogue. The Zhengwu year, spring. The sun rose over a peaceful imperial capital. In a small apothecary on the outskirts of the city, a young woman named Meifeng woke up. She had no noble title. Her father was a simple, retired scholar. Her brother, June, was outside, loudly arguing with a street vendor about the price of ink. She sat up, her heart racing. She felt as though she had just woken from a dream that lasted centuries. She looked at her hands, smooth, unscarred, and free of the scent of poison. There was a knock at the door. She opened it to find a tall man in the simple leather armor of a border scout. He had a scar over one eye and a sword at his hip that looked far too expensive for his rank. He stood there for a long time, just looking at her. His eyes were full of a mountain's worth of memories and a sea's worth of relief. "I heard the lady of this house makes a tea that can cure a soul's weariness," the man said, his voice a low, familiar rumble. Meifeng felt a single tear track down her cheek. She didn't know his name in this life. She didn't know his rank, but she knew his heart. "It takes a long time to brew," Meifeng smiled, reaching out to take his hand. "A lifetime at least." "I have nothing but time," Xiao replied. Behind them, the shadow of the palace loomed on the horizon, but for the first time in an eternity, the Phoenix and the Guardian were finally, truly free.